Hey guys! After being asked how I made some of the drone footage, I decided to make a series of short videos to explain the best settings you can use on your DJI Mini 3 Pro drone to get a cinematic and nice look for your footage. Some people seem to have issues with their footage being too jittery or grainy, not looking as good as some of the videos on YouTube or the commercial videos by DJI themselves. To get to the core, we need to check some of the settings together with the specifications to make sure they are set to the right parameters. This will enable you to shoot awesome footage. Let's get straight into the details. First off, you go into the camera settings menu. This can be achieved by clicking on the three dots in the top right corner. Then you go to camera. Here you see the possible settings for recording with the camera. For my personal experience, I changed them to the following. As a recording format, I use MOV. That format produces bigger file sizes, but also a higher bit rate. Further on, I enable DC-like, since this gives us the full 10-bit color output of the sensor of the drone. The coding format will be H.265 if you shoot in a mode like 4K 60. And can be set to H.264 if you shoot in 4K 30, also marked as a high-quality mode. I didn't really notice much of a difference between those modes. Make sure you enable the histogram, since this allows you to check if the scene is properly exposed. This is essential since corrections afterwards can be tough. The dynamic range of this drone is not the best, so you need to make sure you are not over and especially not too underexposed, since the sensor generates a lot of noise in dark areas. I also enable the overexposure warning, which comes in handy. Most of the time I set the white balance to 5500K, that fits most of the lighting situations. When you leave this on auto, it can happen that the drone switched between values and you get inconsistent looking footage, which is nothing we want. In the menu style, DJI finally added a sharpness and noise reduction setting in one of the last updates. This is awesome, since the noise reduction was way too much in my eyes, especially if you recorded low light and night footage. I set those values to -2 each, since I want the flexibility to add sharpness or reduce noise afterwards in the editing software. If you feel the footage is a bit too grainy, just play with the noise reduction setting and add a bit as you feel it's necessary. After checking those settings, leave the menu. Now you should see the histogram on the main screen. You can drag it wherever you like. Now you check the setting on the very right bottom corner. Here you can switch between Pro and Auto. For best results, we turn on the Pro settings. Next to it, you can adjust the resolution, FPS, and other settings we already saw in the settings menu. I choose 4K 60 since this allows me to make 2x slow motion shots if I want, by slowing the footage down 50% in Premiere. Now comes an important part. Here you can also set the ISO and the shutter speed. This drone has a fixed aperture of 1.7, which is really nice since it allows to catch a lot of light and works nicely in low light situations. The main thing to get smooth cinematic shots with a bit of motion blur, you always set 2x the shutter speed in relation to the FPS. So when I have 4K 60, I set 1/120 shutter speed. Or when I have 4K 30, I set 1/60 shutter speed. That's the golden rule. If the shutter speed is much higher, the footage starts to look more digital and jittery. This is what the drone does in auto mode. Why does this happen? Because of the fixed aperture of 1.7, the only possibility to reduce the amount of light entering the sensor is to set a higher shutter speed. The ISO comes in as well. I personally never go above ISO 200, maybe 400 in very low light situations, since the amount of grain gets too much in my eyes. And here comes the most important aspect. Most of the time people will record footage in bright daylight. It will be too bright to maintain the settings of shutter speed even at the lowest ISO possible, which is ISO 100. So how can you maintain the right shutter speed? There is only one way to do so. By the use of ND filters. A right ND filter is key to awesome looking footage with those settings. To estimate which ND filter is right, you apply the filter and check exposure and the histogram by pointing the drone towards the scene you are going to shoot. In my experience, ND32 worked really well for many daylight situations, preventing that I had to go up with the shutter speed to avoid overexposed footage. If you are flying and cannot swap the filter, you can still double the shutter speed for adjustments or change the ISO to a higher value if it gets too dark. It worked pretty well for me and helped me to shoot footage like this. It was filmed in late autumn on a morning in the golden hour, with loads of sunlight but also dark and shadowy areas. In my experience, ND32 worked really well for many daylight situations, preventing that I had to go up with the shutter speed to avoid overexposed footage. So to sum it up, I give you an example you can try. Recording mode 4K 60 with shutter speed of 1:120 together with an ND32 filter. I use the ND/CPL combination by Freewell. I use the kit with 6 different filters ranging from just a CPL over to a combination of ND and CPL ND4 up to ND64. They are easy to swap. Just hold the gimbal and switch the glass in front of the lens to the left, and mount the ND filter vice versa. You don't need to apply much force, it comes of easy and goes back on like this as well. Those filters will also affect the way the sensor records reflecting surfaces like water or glass. It will look clearer. Here you can see examples I recorded by a lake. The reflection looks really nice and clean. So this is it from me. I hope I could help you to improve your recording skills with this awesome little drone. You can find links to the gear I use in the description below. Maybe I had another video later where I explain some settings in Adobe Premiere Pro to get a cinematic and anamorphic look I achieved in my latest video, Dolomite's drone flight. Check it out since it shows all those settings I applied to get that footage. Thanks for watching. See you next time.